Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Creatives Chat, episode 50, featuring Virginia. Join us as we chat about who knows what. Our show will begin now. Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by wearehistorically.com. Conscious Human Apparel, and
learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
Welcome back. I'm Rusty.
I'm Peter.
And today we have a very special guest lined up for our show. Peter, tell our audience who we have.
Ooh, Rusty, our guest is a spiritual seeker, yoga teacher, Reiki healer, and hypnotherapy enthusiast. She loves to travel and is currently living in Guatemala at a retreat center teaching yoga. We have on Virginia today.
Everybody, let's meet Virginia.
And welcome to Creatives Chat, Virginia. How you doing today?
Hi, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm really good.
Of course. Well, you caught my eye on Instagram, and I always find that when you have a really, call them spiritual powerhouses, just dropping truth bombs and wisdom nuggets for everybody, I always want to tap in and see, how did your story develop? So for our audience, why don't you just tell them a little something about yourself? What do you do? Where are you at?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm in Guatemala teaching yoga. I just said this on a YouTube video the other day, and I mean, it was quite a good tagline. I basically work in the Hogwarts of spirituality right now in Guatemala. It's like a retreat center, like with yoga, meditation, retreats, beautiful food, lots of spiritual people. And I'm teaching yoga here. I've been teaching yoga for the last 4 years and teaching exercise and Pilates for, I think, 7 years now.
Wow.
And this journey started out, I think, initially what drew me to the yoga practice and exercise and teaching healthy living was a dark night of the soul, and coming out of that using these practices and practices of the mind, energetic practices. And then that inspires you to share this work, this knowledge with other people as well. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Adventure. Well, that's to say the least about it. So we're bringing it back to 2012. You have this spiritual awakening, this dark night of the soul you mentioned. What caused the reaction, and what was kind of the effect? Where did it take your life in terms of that new pivot and trajectory?
I think really, to put it bluntly, is like you get to a point where you can't take any more of your own BS, like no more of my bullshit, right? Not living up to my potential, knowing deep down inside that I had a lot of potential, but always thwarting myself, always self-sabotaging. I was in my younger years, like actually I started like really young, like 13, 14, I got enticed into like the party lifestyle. And I was quite, well, not quite, I was an A-star student at school. And then I just decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. I want to do school, I'm not doing it. And I just left and went a bit wild. But actually in hindsight, even though at the time I wasn't living up to my potential, that wild side of me helped me to learn so many lessons that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. If I'd have just gone down like the, goody two-shoes route, I just wouldn't have learned the things that I've learned to then be able to share from this perspective that I have now. So even though maybe it wasn't quite the traditional path, I think many people on the spiritual journey recognize these challenges, these drawbacks that we would see them as are actually a blessing. They help us to serve others in the future,
Oh, of course, because it's very interesting when you have that natural intuition where you just know that this indoctrination system isn't it. It's, it just hits to the core where it's like, I'm done with this. This is a game and I'd rather play a better one.
Exactly. Yeah. I think, it was definitely a good thing. Now I look back and I recognize all of the things that happened in the schooling system that I didn't pay attention in the end. I went off and had a party instead. And it helped me to then just learn along my own path and seek out my own knowledge, which doesn't happen, you know.
Well, that's the one thing that schools, and I find the educational systems always try to kind of sponge out is, you know, seeing your own perspective for the unique one it is and really building your own knowledge from it. That's really cool. So, okay, so how did you get from the UK to India? Like, what did that transition happen?
So it goes in cycles, you know, like you make a change in your life and you realize, okay, this level of change has actually served this next stage of me giving service to others, expanding as a person. And then again, even I think whatever level of evolution you go to, if you're in that stage for a long time, then that's going to start to feel like stagnation. I think Buddha, the Dalai Lama, anybody, if they stay the same for a long, long time, that can still turn to stagnation, no matter what level of wisdom you have. So I was teaching yoga, I was teaching Pilates in London, and I'd found, you know, a job and a role that was really suitable for me, but there was things about it that just weren't working anymore. So then I decided to do my yoga teacher training in Goa in India. And India is a magical place. That's when things really turned around for me, because in the yoga training, like the official training, I was there for a whole month. I was doing my meditation practice. I was doing my breath work. I was doing my yoga every single day for a whole month. There's a little friend here. That's who's joined. So when you do that consistently every day, like my frequency was so high. And I then just recognized, wow, I'm a super, super powerful being if I dedicate myself to this work. A lot of this is consistency. Yeah, it's not
facts.
Doing your meditation just once a week. It's not visiting your subconscious mind just whenever you feel like it. You've got to be committed to it, right? And see the magic come through. Like, I think actually, as I speak, I recognize that magic is found in doing the boring things over and over again, and then the miraculous happens.
Because and we take it for granted. I always find that the subtleties of this experience, we really are, like the timelessness aspect, like being in the flow, like that's such a common statement, or in the zone, whatever. I don't know what they use in the UK. How do they say that? Like the flow state.
We say flow.
So it's like, you know, being in the zone. We've been doing that since we were little kids. We do it in school. We do it when people are playing video games, whatever it is their expression. But it's like that's its own form of meditation. We're escaping time in a moment. We completely disregard it like it's just nothing. And we take it for granted. And it's that same concept of it's the small things that turn into the greatest, honestly, return. And I find that consistency, that discipline, when you really fall in love with your practice, it becomes a way of being. And then you transcend just going through the motions. Like most people in self-sabotage, only doing something when you find yourself in trouble or you really need to, you know?
Yeah, right, so true. When your back's against the wall, that's when you start taking action.
Right? So that's an interesting process. So you're in Goa, India, when you really it sounds like when you really fell in love with your spiritual development. And how did that unfold from there?
So after then, there was a kind of like shock period of going back to London from such an idyllic setting, a little paradise on the beach, beautiful yoga shala, beautiful food every single day. And then you get back to cold London, rain, pollution, long hours. And then your brain just goes, this ain't it. I've just experienced a taste of paradise. I'm a badass manifester. I can make that happen for me all the time. My life does not have to be, you know, boring London. Even there was a time, that's the thing, it's perspective. There was a time when the city was like, whoa, okay, I'm this new person. There's so many more lessons here in the city I grew up more in the countryside, right? So that was a transition for me going to the city, but then having a new perspective of India, of Goa, of all of this beautiful magic, then that was like the spark. Like, okay, I can make this a long-term thing for me. My life, you know, many of us, I think the key, we should create a life where we don't need a holiday from it. as people, we shouldn't need holidays, right?
Yeah, 100%.
We should be feeling that all the time.
Yeah, at peace.
That's what I sought to create in my life a little bit more, you know?
Woo. I love that. You got to get that on a shirt. No, but seriously though, we take it for granted, and that's the stuff I feel like that's the dream, or the, you know, Maya, the illusory state that so many people live in, that it's we should be going through the motions, that you have to, you kind of put your head down and just grind through life. And it's like, no, life is meant to be uplifting. It's meant to fulfill us, you know. And like, I love how you said it's magical when you really start to tap into these practices, because when you really do tap into that, I like to say the God and goddess energy of creation and manifestation, it's wild what you can come up with when you have these yearnings of the heart.
Yeah. We think magic, you know, oh, wow, it's miraculous. Oh, I manifested something and it blew my mind. But if we weren't subject to so much programming from childhood, we would have consistent magic all the time.
Yeah. Well, what was your biggest experience that kind of made you recognize, oh, wow, this is real? Manifestation's a fact.
Yeah. So it was shortly after, then I came back from my yoga teacher training and I decided, right, I'm going to travel and save my money. So I saved up, you know, enough money to be away for a good few months, 6 months or more. And so I decided to use that time as soon as I was traveling to dedicate myself to my meditation every day, like I had in my yoga training, writing in my diary my intentions, writing out my gratitude, visualizing every day. I just committed myself to my spiritual practice as I was traveling. And actually, to commit myself, I made a little video series. It was one of my first stumblings into YouTube. And I say stumblings because the videos weren't that great. At least it kept me accountable. So I did my own little challenge on YouTube and kept myself accountable for 3 weeks. Wow. And then we got to Rishikesh in India. I'd been to Bali, Thailand. And when I got to Rishikesh, I was hitting the 3-week mark of being consistent, with my practices. And then I started manifesting instantaneously. And I learned later that I was in an energetic pocket, of ascension, basically. Another friend told me, oh, manifestations are fast at that time. But I was amazed. My things that I was writing in my diary were turning up the next day. You know, that fast. And then there was one time I'd got to Kerala, which I'd gone from the north back to the south. And I arrived in Kerala and I'd written in my diary, I'd like to be an extra in a Bollywood film, because somebody else had told me that they were one, they'd done it. I was like, that's amazing, I want to do that. So I wrote it in my diary, and 2 days later, a guy stopped me on the street and he was like, do you want to be in a Bollywood film? Do you want to be an extra?
What?
And I was like, oh, I'm magical. It was just an accumulation of small things coming in really, really fast, where I recognized this power is truly in consistency, commitment to raising the vibration. That's where the magic is.
Yeah. Then you become that unstoppable force as the force of life itself.
I love that. Yeah.
Yo, it's so true though. So, okay, so this might be a little bit of a push, but experientially, I feel whenever we get these peeks behind the veil that, universe source shows us that, hey, this is what you are. Usually there's some challenge immediately after that to kind of see if you're really serious about the process. So I'm just kind of curious.
Or something. Yeah. So then there really was a challenge. And this is huge shadow work for me. Learning lessons about relationships and how often what will happen for me is my challenge will be a relationship that I know is not right for me, but then I do it anyway. So that happened. And then that ended my travel journey because I'm heartbroken. I'm a very sensitive person. I still am. So heartbreak is always something for me that stops me in my tracks and puts me backwards.
Yeah.
Your energetic practices go to the wayside when your heart is broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel that because you're so used to just being that radiant source of light, but when there's that vulnerability that's broken, instantaneously we just want to kind of contract and put the walls up.
Exactly. And so shortly after that, I went back home and I saved some more money. But I was, at the end of that trip, I was changed dramatically because I did psilocybin, huge dose in Thailand. So,
heroic dose.
yeah. And this is going to see this this love interest in Thailand. And I did the huge dose of mushrooms in a shake. Where was we? Koh Lanta. And I went to a different dimension. I was moving energy, like I was communicating with the trees, I was communicating with the grass. Like it was mind-blowing. But in that moment, then I was like, you're not loving yourself properly. And then I recognized so deeply, like, oh, I should love myself like so much more. Like, why are you following this guy around? Like, I just knew it instantaneously. And I was like, right, I'm going. The next day I was like, bye. Like, it's great. Like, I was just a new person, basically. And in that trip, I recognized the energy of clothes, organic fabrics. I could feel the energy of them, that they were high vibration, and the polyester and like the fake fabrics, I could feel the low vibration of them. So when I got home after that, I was like really into making my own clothes. I started like my own little clothing business and organic cotton t-shirts and stuff like that, just from that mushroom trip. So even though I'd gone like on this roller coaster of like highs and lows and finding magic and then getting my heart broken, having a crazy mushroom trip, I learned so much from just one traveling. And that is what made me start like the woke nomad thing, because it was the traveling that awakened me completely. I was always spiritual, but travel changed everything for me.
Yeah. So when you say traveling changed everything,
but
what was it like?
The space from my routine.
Yeah.
It's the space from your responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
So you could get the same benefits from travel, I think, if you just let go of all your routines, which I think is what many people have had just recently from having quarantine, from being at home and not having to do their normal routine. It's giving them that space to recognize, oh, maybe I can start to commit myself to my meditation. Maybe I can start to get into yoga. I have suddenly got time for myself. What can I do? Delve deeply? It is time, isn't it? And that's the powers that be of us distracted for a reason, because they know if we slow down and start to go, oh, what's inside of me, then we're going to recognize how powerful we are.
Yes, right? Yes, that's the thing right there. When you have the break in normality, it's the end of distractions. And I feel like that's the one thing right there. You hit the nail on the head, in my opinion, on the instant gratification, how it's always kind of jumping one thing to the next. I mean, even the news, like everything in our media, everything we consume is always so just boom, 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 boom. You never get a chance to really breathe. And when you are traveling, you get to tap back in more to that natural, playful state, like when we were kids. And I think that's when life can speak to you and through you. So that's an epic dance. So you come back, you make your clothing line, you're getting to that creative, artistic expression. How did you get into like Reiki healing and everything from there? Because these are some pretty big like skills.
So then, well, the clothing line and things, that kind of, and art, I got into art as well. That happened while I was traveling, but I put that to the wayside when COVID hit, really. It was actually kind of like my guides pushed me because I am one of those people that's interested in many, many things. Like if I put my mind to something, I can get a certain level of proficiency at it if I just concentrate for long enough. So I find this with a lot of my coaching clients as well, is, you know, as people are more awakened beings, actually you can be talented at what you put your mind to. So often it is choosing what is the right path for you. But since I've started like sharing more on my Instagram, and I intuitively post. So as I start writing my Instagram, or as I switch on the camera to do my YouTube, I connect with source, and then I just let whatever wants to come out. And so what started happening was basically I was like signing myself up for stuff that I hadn't really chosen. So I was like suddenly offering coaching when I'd never really planned it. Yeah. My Instagram. And like suddenly doing like an online retreat when I didn't really plan it, but I was just allowing the flow as I was writing my post.
Yeah.
That happened, then it kind of expanded more and more. And it worked. I've made money. I've been able to travel and work through this. But to be honest, it wasn't something that I completely chose. And I love art, but I do know deep down that art is something that I do to raise my vibration. The clothes thing was me just connecting with nature. And I think maybe in my future, I'd love to make like a conscious clothing line. But I know deep down in my heart, my service is to do the coaching, to speak with people, to share information. Like that is what I'm being pushed to do. And I feel in my heart like...
Well, it's funny because everyone's gotten activated. The healers, the light bringers, the awakened ones. I find that your story resonates so much with just hundreds of people that I've seen, and I know that just all of a sudden it was like the switch was flipped, and it's like time to teach, time to time to do my pilgrimage and show people what's up.
Did you find that like last year, like 2020? Did you kind of find like there was like as soon as it started happening, you're like, oh shit, I've got to do my work? It's like some alarm clock, like, oh yeah, it's time for me to start taking a bit more action.
Well, it's funny because, I could have interpreted the question you said in the green room like, oh, so how did we start? How did it start? That's kind of how the show started, was from that aspect of, it was very interesting. It was another synchronicity, you could say, because it was combined with the manifestation. I had the thought, I was like, I really want to just talk about spirituality to people. And like, I have my own channel. I do my own stuff with that. I have my own clients. I've been doing that for a little bit, but I was like, but I know that those aren't the types of people that really need it. They're already into it. They're just getting those added tools. But, how do we really speak to everyone? And I was invited on another show that Rusty produced called The Cure. It's not on anymore, but it was like a music show. And I ended up coming on like randomly. I'm like, I don't have anything written. My buddy asked me, that was the host of it, to come on. I was like, I'll try. Sure. I'll read some poetry or something. Like, so through that, I met Rusty. And then he was like, hey, I have a great idea for a show. Like, I really want you involved, blah, blah, blah. Like,
nice.
Then Chat was born. So it's just trying to
happen.
Yeah, just with the flow. But again, the within the yearning of being like, oh, it'd be nice to have a show, like a little talk show. Like 2 days later, all this stuff started to unfold. So I feel it.
Yeah. Also, like, as I said, it just happened. Then I kind of got the download that, no, it doesn't just happen. There's been like many years of like energetic groundwork that you've done,
Nice.
You raise your vibration, you connect with source, and then that's what clears the path for things to just happen.
Well, it's what you said earlier, like you have to love yourself. And I find that's the truest testament of all the healers like yourself that I've gotten a chance to kind of like meet and talk with, is we all go through this process of dipping our toes and diving deep into the waters of, self-sabotage and chaos and egoic living until we really have that catalyst where we look within fully. And when we really love ourselves, then life unfolds in such beautiful unknown ways. But it always leads to the same thing that I've seen from everyone, is that you're finally doing something that resonates with your heart. So it's really cool to like see it tap in with others like that.
Yeah, for sure.
How did you end up in Guatemala then?
So Guatemala was kind of 2 years ago. My friend posted a picture of the lake, which is where I am in San Marcos, Lake Atitlan. And as soon as I saw that picture, I just knew that I had to go there. And this time March last year, I was supposed to come here, but the borders shut as like maybe three or 4 days before I was supposed to get my flight. And I'd packed up all my stuff from London, like finished my like yoga teaching jobs and my Pilates jobs, like quit those. So I was like, right, I'm going traveling again. I'm ready to go. And then the border shut, and I ended up back at my mum's house for a few months, like saying, why me? What is this? I need to get on that flight. What's happening? and kind of went into a little spiral of like this negative mindset, and then recognized, oh, I'm forgetting all of my energetic practices, and kind of brought that back. And then after a few months, I kind of got the download. Well, if you don't go to Guatemala, you can go elsewhere. You know, I think what happened with COVID is everyone got so scared and didn't know what was happening. You're like, okay, I've got to stay at home. I can't do anything. And then I recognized I'm the creator of my reality. I can go where I want. You know, I create my safety. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
My thoughts, my energy, care of my own health. I can go where I want. So then I decided to go to Mexico. I was there for 3 months. Yeah. And then by that time, whilst I was in Mexico, the land border for Guatemala opened. So I traveled to the other end of Mexico by land and then went across the border.
Wow.
Made it here. But on the journey here, like through my Instagram, I connected with a beautiful lady. Her name is Solveig, and she runs a project called the Mayan Wisdom Project. And she connected with me on Instagram, and I helped like to promote some of her services through my platform as well. And at that time in Mexico, I was kind of getting like little like inklings of past lives, and feeling connected to this land. And when I first arrived in Mexico, I got some really strange dreams, and like I was a different person.
Wow.
So I feel like I do have a connection to this land. And then her contacting me and asking me to help with her work, it was kind of like a confirmation. And then she did a mind reading with me. So I do feel like I'm connected here. And as soon as I got to the lake, you feel the energy of the lake. It's such a beautiful space, and it attracts many, many spiritual people, awakened souls. You know, it's an amazing piece of land here.
Yeah. I mean, that just sounds like quite the journey. And it's funny how you said it, because again, for the listeners, this is kind of one of those green room chats where it's you just kind of naturally had a family start to pop up there, where it's just more and more people are just coming, and this community is really starting to grow. Is that one of those things you really wanted to manifest as well, or is this just like the natural flow?
Yeah, this is something that I always end up getting connected with. Like, again, this was something that happened to me when I was traveling before. I'd got back to England, and then, I missed out of time. So I ended up going back to Thailand after my first time of traveling. I went back again. And in that interim period, it was after the mushrooms, I was so connected to everything. I was like, we need to start a new currency. We need to start our own communities. This is before COVID, right? I was just like getting these downloads and like making the videos. And I made one video on my YouTube about like having the download that we don't even need the money that we use. We can use manifesting, because I was so excited about manifesting. It's like, well, why do I need money? I could just manifest whatever I want.
Yeah.
What's the point of it? That's how magic I felt at the time. And some David, a really cool guy in Thailand, he was starting his own permaculture farm. And he saw my YouTube video that I made, like really excited about making a new community, making our own money. Like, I was just like, I was in the zone basically. And he sent me a message like, come out here, like help us. So then that when I went back to Asia, I went back a second time, and I went to his permaculture farm. I went and stayed at a place called Gaia Ashram, where they do permaculture and community and things. And so that was my first like link with alternative communities. And then from there, I went to a village in northern Thailand called Pai. And this is a hippie town as well. And a guy called Michael, and he's now come here he's living at the yoga forest now. He's like manifested a little house and a tent at the top. He's helping out here now as well. But when I connected with him in Pai, I didn't know that then I was going to connect with him in England again. And he started his own community in Ireland, which he's just left with a guardian. But it seems like synchronicities always connecting me with people that are making like land, like alternative communities basically. And there's another person he's gone to Costa Rica now, but I was connected with him. He was in Belize before. And that was my initial goal, was to get to Belize and go there. But that one kind of fell through. It's still difficult to get into Belize at the moment. So they're remaking Costa Rica.
Wow.
So I think that is the way forward, is creating New Earth. Is, you know, this is a term that's been thrown around in the spiritual community, 5D or whatever, but what does New Earth mean? It's not going to happen until we start taking action to create it.
Ooh.
You know, we can't sit around waiting for it to happen.
And I find that's one of those spiritual kind of paradoxes, is when you come to recognize that's like, oh, well, life is always kind of presenting me these opportunities. Like once you get a taste, you can kind of get really caught up in that spiritual cul-de-sac of just like, oh, well, things will just fall in my lap. But it's like, no, like life wants you to always act. Yeah, exactly. You always have to put yourself out there to receive the grace. Like, whew.
Yeah, that's a download that I got just recently. Is you know, the law of attraction teachings are avoid resistance, right? Do what you can to release resistance, just be in the zone, just be in the flow, and everything will work out for you. But this can only work up to a certain point. Like how I see it is we all have like a vibrational set point where you naturally go back to this vibration, like a level of vibration. And to raise your actual consistent vibration, you have to overcome a certain level of resistance, which is actually ego resistance. It's the ego's role to keep you the same. So there's going to be, you level up as you want to start your projects or manifest something big, you have to work through resistance. But it's not the resistance of, oh, I don't feel like it, I can't do it. It's the resistance of, if I do this, then I'm going to be a different person, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing, is once you start to recognize, this is why, you know, internal communication is so important. And we really don't get taught how to interrelate with our own inner space, because when you start to separate yourself from ego, which is again that like source of separation, then you start to see its kind of games. And I've talked about this before, where I had an experiment after some pretty big like recognitions and like, you know, experiences of oneness through meditation and everything, where I went like 2 weeks from like on my walk to work. I was like, okay, well, whatever the mind comes up with and tries to resist and has tension for, like anything that's pretty much just like fear, doubt, negativity, angst, like overly excited. I was like, I'm going to do the opposite. It blew my mind. My life was like the best it's ever been. I think I got a raise at that time too, now that I think about it, but just like so many different breakthroughs with people at work, you know, different projects getting started by expressing myself. And that kind of got me thinking like, okay, so what is the role of the ego? And it's like, it's really the one that causes the self-sabotage when we believe it. And once we start to recognize it, then that separation occurs. And that's the beautiful moment right there, is we start to realize, oh, it's just kind of helping us grow. Like,
wow. So can you give an example of like how you did that? So doing the opposite, like in practical terms, like what happened? What did you do?
It was, so one of the things for me was the culture at my work at this time when I was experimenting with it. There are pretty negative people. Just kind of like there's a few toxic, you know, ones who that kind of seeps into that whole space and the environment. And I had a manager who was always very no first. So anytime anyone would suggest anything in a meeting, he would just be like, no. Or he would kind of like roast you in front of everybody, like just their own insecurities, like whatever their own projections were. So I was just like, I'll just keep my mouth shut. You know, I won't say anything in the group. I'll approach him one-on-one, because then he's usually more likely to say yes. But for some reason, I had this feeling where it was just like, no, don't do it. And I was like, might as well try with this one, you know? So boom, say it. And he was like, oh, wow, that was a really good idea. I like that. And then 2 other people started to like expand on it. And then we actually started a new program from it.
Wow.
So I was one of those things where I was like, okay, this is nothing like I've ever experienced before. Like,
I love that.
Let's play with this.
Michael A. Singer, The Surrender Experiment. Have you read that?
No, tell me more.
So good. So, have you read his other book, Michael Singer? Other one, but I've forgotten what it's called. But the other one is actually the most popular book. But the Surrender Experiment is like a kind of like a autobiography of his life. And he got into meditation, and one day, like in the forest, like he had like this extreme connection basically to source, where he felt like the bliss of meditation, kundalini raising, I suppose, but he worded it much more differently. Like it was an intense experience basically. And after that meditation experience, he just wanted to get back there. So he was always trying to shut up the little voice. He's like, can this voice just shut up? Because in that meditation experience, it was gone. He was just completely connected. And so he started doing an experiment in his life where if like somebody asked him to do something, he would just say yes. Like no matter what it was, and no matter what the little voice was saying, the little voice would usually be saying like, no, don't do that. But he would just say yes. And then what happened is he became like a multi-millionaire. And all he wanted to do, initially, all he wanted to do was like live in the forest by himself. So he built his own little cabin. And then from just saying yes, 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 it turned into like this spiritual center where many people would come to like practice their spiritual practice. Like he brought many like famous monks from India there, but he never planned any of it. Wow. Yeah, like had a computer programming business. Super amazing book, but it just reminded me of that. It's like, if you don't listen to the little voice, miraculous things can happen.
It's 100% true though. And I think it was, I'm trying to think, it might've been either Muji or Adyashanti who akined it to, you know, like the hero in a film. You know, it's like the I am presence is the hero, you know, and the ego is this antagonist. And and that's, again, it's like, it's fundamentals. Like, how do you have a great movie? You have to have a really good villain. You know, the hero is only as good as the villain. And that's the kind of inner working that people always overlook, is the trying to silence the mind, the trying to do these different things, you know, holding on to like a past experience. It's no, we have to embrace the now and realize what it's always presenting before us. Because I come from like more of like the native background with the mind and how it's kind of interacted with it. It's kind of like the coyote or the fox, incredibly wise creature, you know, but in the stories, it's always the one that kind of gets us into mischief. But through the mischief, we learn the lesson. So yeah, so it's always an interesting thing, like even just how we're taught about things and, you know, the attachment to the mind itself, we never get taught how to engage with it and utilize it for our growth. I blame school, but
yeah, I think it's intentional.
Let's sharpen this spear through all this arithmetic and all these things, but you never learn how to actually turn it off or relate with it properly.
No. Or how to deal with money, how to relate with each other. Like there's just myriad of things missing from our schooling system.
And the most important one I feel like is just emotional intelligence, being able to read emotions from others and yourself. Because I find that we're all, at least amongst the healers that I've seen, like you said it earlier, like you're really emotionally sensitive. I'm super tapped into others' emotions. And that was one of the biggest things that was like, oh, duh, that's right. Until I realized, oh, I'm not even picking up my own emotions right now. I'm picking up theirs. I'm literally soaking up theirs.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you protect yourself? How do you do that in terms of dealing with?
I found there's just a simple technique that you can say. If you start to feel an emotion that you recognize, oh, there's no actual reason that I'm feeling this emotion right now. All you need to do is set the intention, and I let emotions that do not belong to me be gone. And it's setting the intention. Because how many times do we set the intention to let go of emotions that don't belong to us? We don't. We're definitely not taught that. No, but it works.
I love that.
Let go.
So in terms of your own kind of development, you know, I was checking out your ebook, Shadow Alchemy. How did that concept come about? When did you really get into understanding the purpose and role of shadow work in your life?
This was actually after traveling. It was after the mushroom experience. And I started to recognize, oh, there's some patterns in relationships that are happening for me. Can you hear the rain?
Oh, that was rain? I was like,
it's raining now. It's rainy season in Guatemala. It's actually very beautiful, but when it rains, it rains.
I was going to say, it's dumping.
And I recognized there were some patterns in my life that were just on repeat. And I'm really a fan of Marissa Peer. I don't know if you've heard of her. And there's another energy worker. I was trying to remember her name earlier, but I've forgotten it. She's on Mind Valley. Her name. I can't remember. Anyway, there's like two really major energy healers on Mind Valley, and I used some of their practices to clear like past experiences, past memories, past pain. And after that, I just noticed such a change in my life and my own energy that then I developed my own practice. I think often what happens is we're like, oh, that guru can help me. They can solve all my problems. But they're your teacher, and then it's your job to then take those teachings and use what works for you and make something your own as well, you know?
Yeah.
So that's 100%. What I did with that information, because there were some things from their teachings that I felt were missing. And I found this in hypnotherapy as well. I've had a few sessions with hypnotherapists in London. Sometimes I would leave like feeling really, really sad because you've revisited the emotions, but you haven't cleared it, or you haven't used positive energy to then fill that space that you opened up. So I've developed my own technique now that helps to like kind of tie up the energy, because we need to revisit some of these painful experiences, but actually with the subconscious mind, we have the power to basically change the past. The subconscious mind does not know the difference between imagined reality and the true reality, which is what we call the true reality, which is probably the dream anyway. But through our imagination, we can basically go back and tell that past version of ourselves what they needed to hear in that moment. Tell the antagonist or whoever it was that was teaching us the lesson in that moment that they need to say sorry, and get them to say sorry and apologize. You can do whatever you want. And if you're in that space where your subconscious mind is open, it can be super, super powerful. And then your frequency will start to reflect that imagined reality that you programmed into your own subconscious mind.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So how did you even get it introduced into hypnotherapy in that sense?
She used to do one. She did hypnotherapy to stop smoking. And she stopped smoking like really quickly. She did it to lose weight. So there's a English hypnotherapist called Mckenna. He's had a huge influence on my life. Like, I used to struggle with my weight, and I listened to his CD like every day for a whole month, and that really changed my relationship with food. And then I did energetic practices on myself. But that sparked my interest in it. Paul Mckenna, really powerful guy. And underrated. Like he was well known in England for a long time for like doing stage hypnosis, but actually like his like proper work, you know, like emotional work, was totally underrated. Like people don't recognize how powerful, and he's woke or awakened. It's like these days. Like he's not diet woke. He's like awakened, but like undercover. Like, you know those ones where they're just like sharing information, but they're not even talking about spirituality.
Yeah,
but he's definitely awakened.
Yeah. Just sees it from a different just sees it from a different angle. And I find that's one of the coolest things when you look at it is how many people are talking about the same truths from different perspectives. Yeah, and that's a really powerful concept. And I really love how you said the knowing of the imagination, when you can really start to visualize and internally manifest this scenario, tracing back to your childhood. I like to call those like healing the wounds of the heart. You know, and just kind of like giving your younger self a hug when you needed the hug, and you know, whatever expression it is.
My clients to do. Did they need a hug in that moment? I think they did. I think that past version of you needed to know that they were unconditionally loved. Just source energy, you know?
Yeah. But we forget that. And that's the craziest stuff with me is the most simple solutions are really just boiled down to love, being heard, being valued. And it's fascinating to see how that manifests long term when those issues aren't made. Like you said it really nicely, how those patterns just kept repeating. And I always find that life has this, I like to consider it kind of like a dark, ironic sense of humor, where it's just like, all right, they didn't get it, crank up the heat. Let's make it
again. Thanks, universe.
But it's like, hey, Jocelyn, you awake? Wake up.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So in terms of this growing process, how has it kind of helped you refine your own spiritual process and your own development of just kind of healing others in that journey of coaching?
I think it's helped me to recognize that when you help another, you're helping yourself even more deeply. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I am a Virgo, so a lot of my intuitive actions are to serve. But I recognize, like, more recently, I put other people's achievements, like, they make me happier than my own. It's such a beautiful thing. Like, I never thought that would be me. Like, when I was really young, I was like, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to have the most money. I'm going to have the car. I'm going to be famous. I was really like that. I was a bit a bit of a show off because I was clever. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to have loads of money. And so for me to, like, recognize, actually, there's so much pleasure in helping someone else to have loads of money, or helping someone else to turn a corner in their self-love, or seeing that. And what really fills my heart is when people let me know that it's working. Like, wow, that technique, yeah, it's really changed it for me.
Yeah, it's being a service.
Magic. You know?
Yeah. Well, and that's the compassionate magic.
Yeah.
I love that. It's always really cool, and I find that's a very experience in the sense of, I don't have any kids, but I feel like that's the love you feel when your kid does something, right?
Right.
Like, you're like,
the same thing.
You got it.
Proud of you. Yeah.
But that's so fascinating, though. That's always the stuff that speaks to our heart as human beings. And it just gets covered up.
Like, you're truly connected. We can say, oh, we're all one. But when you start to get that feedback of, like, happiness for somebody else being happy, that's when you truly recognize, yeah, we are connected. Whoa, we really are.
And then love spreads like wildfire. So just giving someone the tools of empowerment like you are, and seeing them transform their own experience, impacting others, is just one of those things where it's like, yeah, now we're all dancing to the same beat. Let's go. Like,
yeah.
So I guess the biggest question that I have for you in this sense is, in this concept of, because you've mentioned it a few times, you received this download, you had this insight, you had this kind of vision of a past self, and just that knowing, how does it come through to you? Is it like a mental image? Is it a voice? Is it just that gut feeling?
It's none. It's none of those. Like, when you get download, it's just, I know. Suddenly I know. It's not words.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I know.
Intuitional knowing. You're tapping, and that's, to me, it's like the Matrix Keanu Reeves I know Kung Fu download. It's just instantaneous knowing, and that to me is most akin to consciousness, is we just know.
Yeah.
Kids know. They do stuff all the time. They just know. You can do backflips and all this crazy stuff. They don't know how to do it. They just do it.
Yeah, that's like sometimes when Lassie feels sick, he just knows to go and eat a certain grass. How does he know that? Yeah, it's kind of like that. I'm just going to do this because it's inside me.
Ooh, so tapping into the intuitional knowing, the pureness of our being, we could say, how could you say for, like, your students, how could you say for the audience, how does each of us tap into that innate knowing that we are?
Well, it's definitely more meditation. That's what led me to more intuitive knowing, is consistent meditation.
Any specific kind of meditation, or is it really just having that sit-down practice of just being?
Yeah, sit-down practice. I mean, when I say meditation, it's not running meditation, it's not walking meditation. It's not I'm doing the gardening and I'm meditating. I know, like, you can be in a meditative state at any time, but I mean, closing your eyes and concentrating on your breathing kind of meditation.
Yeah, the conscious dedication, giving it the reverence, giving it the praise of.
You're, dedicating yourself to what's happening inside and closing off your connection to the physical reality. That's when you're going to open that channel for more downloads. But as I say that, even though I have it, that's what opens me up to the channel. But then a lot of my downloads do come from walking. It's like you open the channel, you prepare it, and then in your everyday life, you're more connected. Yeah?
Fire. No, I love that. I totally get it.
You've got to be willing to sit with the uncomfortable part, but then everything else to flow. So as I'm like coaching people that come to the retreat, I'm reminded of those times when you're first starting out with meditation. Like, it's not always easy.
Yeah.
Because when you sit and close your eyes, there's no distractions. That's when those limiting beliefs will come up. That's when that voice saying, I don't love myself enough, comes up. That's when the criticism starts to creep in. And that's when we learn the most about what we need to clear.
Exactly. Yes.
we don't want to sit with that. Like, we don't want to sit with that voice.
Yeah. Well, I try to akin it to like digestion of the soul.
Yeah,
in that sense.
That voice becomes like, whoa, this is so peaceful and blissful. But it's not at the beginning for most people anyway.
And that brings it back to that role of the mind always trying to make the stress, the imagination kind of creates these problems that aren't there just to challenge us to see if we're really serious. Like, if you really push through it, then you have those breakthroughs. And then life always gives you a taste. Like, if there's one thing I really want the listeners to take from everything, is that life will reward your practice of, conscious effort of really trying to heal and help yourself.
So much so. Totally agree.
And it's brought you in the magic. Yeah, yo. And in terms of the magic in your life right now, kind of what's the next steps for you in Guatemala now, in terms of, you have this growing community of all this cool.
Yeah, meeting many more people that are of like the same mindset, wanting to create something more substantial community-wise. So I think there's quite a few people here that want to buy land, and maybe some collaborations in the future. Like I said, my friend Michael, who's here now, with a couple of other friends from Ireland and England, they've just arrived. There's another guy that I met on my travels in Mexico. He's coming here. Somebody else just messaged me on my Instagram, like, you're an inspiration, I want to come there. And I'm like, come. Like, and this, when I had the connection with the lady from the Mayan Wisdom Project, she's like, there is a prophecy, like people will start to come from all four corners of the earth to the land with the Maya, like to this land. So maybe that's what's happening. And I'd love for us to create permaculture, community, retreat offerings, sort of healing centers,
Yeah, well, you have this community growing. I'm very curious how the energy is being perceived by you in this sense. When you start to get that many light workers and people that are kind of tapped in, how does it change the space? How does it change the interactions and just the overall experience of being there?
Things come up because when you're surrounded by many, many spiritual people, like, as a spiritual person with the same offering, sometimes it can be like, oh, well, do I have enough to give in this space? Because there's so many like-minded people. But then again, that's a new level of learning. Like, we all have something unique to give. And the reason that we're collecting here in this space is because we can make something even more powerful together, But another friend mentioned it as well. She's like, well, how do you market yourself here? Because like everyone's offering like similar things. And with answering her, then I kind of confirmed it to myself. Like, there's somebody out there that has that needs what you have to give, and it's energetic. It's not about the offer. It could be exactly the same thing as the person next door, but your energy imprint is going to speak to somebody else where it wouldn't for the other person.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because we tap into energy first before we even see or hear anything. And that's that law of attraction that I'm curious in terms of you look at your journey and how you even got to Guatemala, it's always been this attraction, repulsion. It's very fascinating to hear. It's really cool though. Like, you've really made your own existence, going to different places, and now you're in Guatemala teaching. And it looks like it's just booming, like your online course. How's that? Like,
I've had some really amazing feedback from it, which has been like, it's been humbling in a way, because putting yourself out there with the content and packaging it, and you know, there's like that voice that comes in that says, am I good enough? This is what I have to give good enough. And then when somebody like Sophia, she's an amazing light that's come into my life through social media, and she did module 1 and she manifested £1,000 like after one lesson, and got her first sale on her conscious business.
That's dope.
Beautiful message, like, and that filled my heart like with so much joy. And then it was just like, but it humbled me, because it was manifesting. Yeah, of course I put the content there, but it was her experiencing what I've experienced with manifesting, and that it's higher consciousness that's guiding this work, and I'm just a vehicle for it, you know. And that is like, it's kind of like a culmination of my journey since traveling, of that magic that I experienced, and because it was so magical that I had to find a way to share that with others. And so through this course, then her having that experience that I had a few years back is just like, whoa. Because before she did the course, she was already really dedicated to her meditation. So it's kind of just like this little puzzle piece that she was waiting for.
Yeah.
And then I've had some, more great feedback. So it's really lovely. And then the next stages of that is like expanding more and offering it to more people. And that comes along with its own lessons.
Yeah. That's so cool though. And do you find that that's one of those patterns that this is kind of putting you in the position to really master, of overcoming that self-doubt, that...
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, as we say about like ascension or raising our vibration and evolving as spiritual beings, it's going to call for us to get more and more uncomfortable, and more and more uncomfortable, and keep having to jump off the cliff and trust that we're going to be caught.
Yeah.
And every time you jump, it's going to be more difficult.
It's way higher.
But the payoff will be even bigger, and the new levels of abundance, the new levels of magic that will come through is going to be even bigger. So it will always be worth it to jump. Like, spirit is always going to ensure that, but we just have to be willing to go.
Yeah, 100%.
Running up until like the full moon, like I had an energy shift, but I was really feeling that like the last few weeks. Oh God, I'm just going to have to keep jumping. What if I don't want to, you know? But that's it now. There's excitement in it. You know, excitement, fear, they're the same thing. You can get excited or you can stay fearful.
Powerful. It's just all the perception, how you approach it, right?
So I've turned it back around and excited to jump. Can't wait.
Love it. Love it. And then you start to dance with life. And then it's just like, oh, this is interesting. This is not what I expected at all, but it's dope. Still cool.
Yeah.
Now, you did mention it previously, little green room conversation, this full moon ritual. I'm curious because I know that the eclipse and everything offered up if we want to get into like the woo of spirituality, it was that astrological doorway that opened up. It was a really good opportunity of renewal, of just really a drastic point to pivot your life wherever you really wanted to. The choice was yours. And you just mentioned it kind of really subtly, like before that full moon, that switch was hit right when it happened. So like, what was your ritual? What was the practice? And I'm very curious about that. Like, how'd it go?
So I did an online ceremony. This was with Sophia, actually, who I just mentioned. She has her project called the Kind Way Company. So she asked me to hold the meditation. And as I've been exploring energy clearing practices, I decided to do some breath work and energy clearing with the group. And because it ended up being a group of women, and it was just a powerful energy in the meditation. So I guided us through an energy clearing to explore the first time that we felt we weren't worthy of love. So much emotion came out. And so we cleared it And also on that morning, I'd taken the time to write down things that I wanted to let go of, and I like to burn them in a little ceremony. And then in the evening, I had a women's circle with some of my friends that have arrived here now. So it was just a really, really powerful day. But from doing that online ceremony with Sophia and the Kindred Company and all those beautiful women that joined, you recognize the power in the collective. If you clear your limits as a collective, I just felt that there was so much power in that. More so than when you do it by yourself.
You like add to each other's energies in that sense of like the potential to really just like, because again, like detach from it, I guess that's probably the better word.
Yeah.
And with that, I just want to say thank you so much, Virginia, for coming on Creatives Chat. Any last words for the audience?
Thank you so much for listening, and keep manifesting, keep your faith.
Ooh, and I'm going to have you stick around for the after show, and listeners, be on the lookout for that.
Nice.
Roll the outro.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always.
I love it. Change and transformation, manifestation.
Yeah.
Click the subscribe button to be notified of future episodes as we chat about who knows what and why.